Hello everyone, I'm Raina Kay and welcome to Crime Corner, where I sit in my corner and talk all true crime everything. Thank you for joining me today to hear this new case, and if you are new here, hi and welcome. I was asked to cover this case by a person in the comment section on my video of the missing Indigenous people, and I had not heard of this case before, so it's definitely a new one for me. So before we go into today's case, I do want to give a trigger warning that this case is very gruesome and the details regarding how this victim was unalived are horrific and very disturbing. Regarding a man known as Septic Tank Sam due to the horrific crime that occurred and how his remains were discovered. I will include a timestamp so that if you are easily disturbed, you can go to a different part of the video that skips those details. So with all of that being said, let's get into today's case. One day on April 13th, 1977, in the city of Lynbrook, Alberta, in Canada, which is about 8.1 miles west of Tofield, a couple went to their old abandoned property in search of a septic tank that they knew they had on that property. However, what they would locate in that septic tank would leave them traumatized to this very day. In the septic tank the couple could see a gray wool sock and a brown shoe bobbing in the murky and pungent water. Upon closer inspection, they noticed it was attached to a leg that was bobbing around. So right away, the couple ran out of the house and went to alert the Tofield Royal Canadian Mounted Police, where two officers arrived at the scene and they were there to recover the body of the man in the septic tank. The officers used empty ice cream pails, and it took them 2 hours, where they emptied out 1.8 meters of water from the tank. They found that the John Doe was wearing a blue Levi's shirt with snap buttons and a gray t-shirt under it. He had on blue jeans and imitation wallaby shoes. And here's an example of the shoes similar to what the John Doe had on. His decomposed body was wrapped in a yellow bed sheet and he was tied up with a nylon rope. His body was then transported to the medical examiner's office in Edmonton, and it was determined that the John Doe, who again they refer to as Septic Tank Sam, was Caucasian. His bones and teeth suggested that he suffered from an unspecified illness at the age of 5. His cause of DEATH was 2 gunshot wounds to the head and the chest. Although it was possible that there could have been more bullets that maybe they didn't reach the skeleton, they couldn't tell because of the decomposition. The medical examiner determined that the victim had been tortured before his DEATH. He had been beaten, tied up, burned with a small butane torch and with cigarettes, and he was SEXUALLYMUTILATED, which I'll be referring to as SM. Now, they do believe that this was done with a sharp object. The SM was so severe that the medical examiner, it took him several months to positively identify the victim as male. Based on the burn marks on his shirt sleeves, the victim could have been tied to a bed while being tortured. The weapon or weapons used to MUTILATE the victim couldn't be conclusively determined due to the remains, although the medical examiner suspected the use of farm shears. After the victim was unalived, his body was covered in quicklime, most likely in an attempt to hasten the decomposition. And for several years, they tried to find out the identity of Septic Tank Sam, but no one ever came forward to say that they had a missing family member or friend. The authorities suspected that he was not from Alberta, but most likely worked as a migrant worker. Due to the lack of evidence in the septic tank, they determined that the victim was most likely unalived elsewhere, and the septic tank was only the dump site. The people or person who unalived the victim are believed to have known him due to how vicious the crime was. And authorities also believe that whoever did this was local to the Tofield area, or were at least familiar with the area due to the location of the dump site being on a rural property. Septic Tank Sam's body had been exhumed from his unmarked grave in Edmonton Cemetery twice. In 1979, his remains were flown to Clyde Snow and Betty Pat Gatliff, who were forensic anthropologists and medical illustrators. The Federal Aviation Administration in Oklahoma, who had been creating 3D facial composites from skulls since the 1960s. Along with creating a facial composite for the victim, the two could tell by measuring his hands that he was right-handed. Snow believed that the victim was of indigenous origin and around 35 years old, which was contradicting the RCMP's belief of the victim being Caucasian and between the ages of 26 and 32. The victim was exhumed and reconstructed for the second time in 2000 by Cyril Chan, who was with the Edmonton Medical Examiner's Office at the time. So the 1,200 residents of Tofield at the time were horrified to hear how the victim was unalived. The farmers in that area began checking their own septic tanks on their properties for bodies, and business owners worried that whoever committed the crime could have been a regular customer at their establishment. Many speculated that the victim may have been SM'd due to committing an sex crime, or maybe due to being unfaithful in a relationship. They didn't know. Ed Lammerts, who was one of the officers who helped recover Septic Tank Sam's body, has since retired, but he believed that the victim might not ever be identified, despite sending x-rays of the victim's teeth to 800 Albertan dentists, coupled up with publishing them in the dental magazines and spending 1 million Canadian dollars on that case. So as of present time, police believe that the victim was unalived by associates of his involvement in various criminal acts in Edmonton. They acknowledge that his killer may no longer be alive. Then, on June 29, 2021, it was reported that the remains had been identified, finally, using genetic genealogy. And this is coming after 44 years from the time that they first found him. Police had submitted DNA to Otherm Inc., which was a private laboratory in the Woodlands, Texas, and on June 30th of 2021, Alberta RCMP publicly identified him in a viral press conference as Gordon Edwin Sanderson. He was a 26-year-old Indigenous man from Manitoba who was living in Edmonton at the time of his passing. The last time Sanderson had talked to his family, he had mentioned that he was going to go visit his brother in Calgary. Sanderson's older sister, it was her DNA that they used to confirm his identity. Upon further research of Gordon Edwin Sanderson, there's very little information out there, but I was able to find out that Gordon was born on October 22nd, 1950, and unfortunately, when he was 9 years old, he was a victim of what they refer to as the 60s scoop. And for anyone who isn't familiar with that, the 60s scoop was a period in which a series of policies were enacted in Canada that enabled child welfare authorities to take or scoop up Indigenous children from their families and their communities for placement in foster homes, from which they would be adopted by white families. So, this is what happened to Gordon, unfortunately, which is just absolutely heartbreaking. Gordon also struggled with addictions and had various run-ins with police. In the 1970s, Gordon was living in Edmonton, and he stated earlier again, the last time that I stated earlier, that the last time he talked to anyone in his family, he told them that he was on his way to go visit his brother named Arthur, who lived in Calgary. And still to this day, it's unknown who committed this horrific unaliving, and the investigation is still ongoing. Now, I did come across a theory, how I am on Reddit, and someone actually came up with a theory. Now that's a whole nother rabbit hole of a serial Killer that they thought maybe could have been involved. And so this person, it's someone that they call, his name was Bruce McArthur. It was from Toronto, Ontario, Canada. He was one of the most prolific serial unalivers in its history. And it was said that he would target men who were not straight and who were living double lives. And the majority of his victims were immigrants to Canada and were hiding their sexual orientations from their families back home. But like I said, that's a whole nother rabbit hole, so I can look more into Bruce McArthur and make a video covering him as well. The cases I've heard so far are just horrific as well. He was arrested back in 2017, but back to Gordon's case, I'm hoping that by making this, we can help spread awareness for his case, as I was unaware of this case. And again, it was requested by someone in my comment section. So thank you, Elsa Walker, for bringing this case to my attention and helping to raise awareness for it. If you would all please like and share this video to get it out into the algorithm, and maybe some more information will come out. You never know, we might help solve a cold case. But that was the case of Gordon Edwin Sanderson. And to his family, I'm very sorry for your loss, and rest in peace, Gordon. I want to say thank you all, and I appreciate you all for taking the time out of y'all's day to come hear another case with me. And if you have any case suggestions, comment down below. I can look into it for sure and make a video on it. And until the next one, please be safe out there.